neon sign reflected off rain-slicked cobblestones, casting wavering shadows across the Charleston waterfront. Inside, the Friday night crowd hummed with the comfortable noise of clinking glasses and low conversation. Behind the polished mahogany bar, Elliot Brennan moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned to make themselves invisible while seeing everything. She was 29, though the weight behind her green eyes suggested someone who'd lived twice that long. 5'4" in her work boots with light brown hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, she could have been any bartender in any coastal town. But the way her gaze swept the room every 43 seconds, checking exits, counting occupants, assessing potential threats, told a different story. So did the thin scar above her left eyebrow, a silvery line she usually covered with makeup, but hadn't bothered with tonight. The scar was from Afghanistan, 9 years ago. A training accident, she told anyone who asked. She was lying. "Another round, Scout?" Old Jimmy called from the corner booth, using the nickname nobody here understood. She smiled, nodded, reached for the bourbon without needing to ask which kind. Her hands moved with the same unconscious precision she applied to everything, muscle memory from a life before this one, before she'd traded Navy intelligence briefings for last call announcements. Beneath the bar, within easy reach of her right hand, a Glock 19 rested in a magnetic holster. Nobody knew it was there. Nobody knew a lot of things about Elliot Brennan. Outside, the November rain intensified, drumming against the windows in rhythmic waves. The weather forecast had called for clearing skies. The forecast had been wrong. Elliot had learned not to trust forecasts, official reports, or anyone who promised that things would get better if she just stayed quiet. She'd stayed quiet for 8 years. It hadn't helped. The door opened at 8:32, letting in a gust of wet wind and something far more dangerous. Elliot felt it before she saw it, that predatory shift in atmosphere, the way prey animals sense the wolf before it emerges from the tree line. Her hand froze halfway to the beer tap, her throat constricted. Derek Vaughn filled the doorway like a bad memory made flesh. 6'3", 240 pounds, with the kind of build that came from religious devotion to iron and rage. His hair had gone gray at the temples since she'd last seen him, but everything else was exactly as she remembered. The way he moved with casual menace. The scar on his right shoulder visible where his shirt collar gaped, she'd put that there with a wrench in a supply room in Kandahar, December 27th, 2015 at approximately 11:40 p.m. local time. She remembered everything about that night, every second. Vaughn's eyes found her immediately. He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. The bar seemed to grow smaller, the air thicker. Elliot's vision tunneled for a moment, just a moment, and she was back in the compound, in the dark hallway, someone's hand over her mouth, breath hot against her ear. "You don't belong here, sweetheart." "Well, well," Vaughn's voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade through silk. "Little Scout, thought you could hide forever." Her training kicked in. Breathe. 4 counts in hold, 4 counts out. Control the autonomic response. Don't let him see the fear. "What can I get you?" Her voice came out steady. Small victory. He crossed the room with deliberate slowness, taking his time, letting everyone watch. The other patrons sensed something wrong in the way animals sense an approaching storm. Conversations quieted, laughter died. He slid onto a bar stool directly in front of her, too close, invading space he had no right to occupy. "Whiskey, neat." He leaned forward, forearms on the bar. "And an apology. You owe me that much." Elliot's hand shook as she reached for the bottle. She steadied it, poured exactly 2 ounces without looking at the measure. Muscle memory. Everything was muscle memory now, defense mechanisms she'd built in the dark places where the official reports said nothing had happened. "Your drink." She set it down, pulled her hand back before he could touch her. $8. "Come on, Scout." His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that made her skin crawl. "Don't be like that. We're old friends, aren't we, from the good old days, Afghanistan? Team 5. Remember?" "I remember everything," she thought. "I remember you cornering me in the supply shed, I remember reporting you 3 times and being told to toughen up. I remember the way you made sure my gear went missing before every patrol. I remember you telling me you'd make me disappear if I didn't shut up about what you did. We were never friends, she said quietly. His jaw tightened. The smile stayed fixed, but his eyes went cold, that specific kind of cold she'd learned to recognize as the moment before violence. That hurts, Scout, really does. He reached across the bar fast as a snake and grabbed her wrist before she could pull away. His grip was iron thumb pressing into the tendons until pain shot up her arm. I'm trying to be nice here. Catch up with an old colleague. That too much to ask. The bar had gone completely silent now. Every eye turned toward them. Elliot's pulse hammered in her ears. She was 29 years old and right back to being 23, powerless, alone, and surrounded by people who would watch and do nothing. Then a voice spoke from the corner booth, calm, measured, carrying the kind of authority that made men straighten their spines without thinking. Son, I think the lady wants you to let go. The speaker rose from the shadows like an old battleship coming about. Master Chief Raymond Dalton stood 6 feet, even age 67, with shoulders that still remembered carrying wounded men through Kuwaiti sand. His hair was silver, his face weathered, but his eyes were clear and hard as gunmetal. Behind him, 7 more men stood in synchronized silence. Vaughn's grip loosened. He turned slowly, recognition dawning across his face like a slow sunrise. Master Chief Dalton. He released Elliot's wrist but didn't stand. The old guard, still fighting battles from the 90s. Dalton stepped forward. The other men fanned out with unconscious precision, covering angles, blocking exits, creating a perimeter. To anyone who'd never served it looked casual. To anyone who had it looked like a textbook tactical formation. We heard you were in Charleston, Vaughn. Dalton's voice never rose above conversational volume. He didn't need to shout. Men like him never did. Thought we'd make sure you behaved yourself. Vaughn laughed, but it sounded forced. Just catching up with an old friend here. No harm in that. Ms. Brennan said you weren't friends. This came from Marcus Wolfe, age 64, former chief petty officer, standing to Dalton's left. I believe the lady. Elliot watched the recognition play across Vaughn's face as he cataloged who was here. The entire old guard of SEAL Team 5. The men who'd trained him, deployed with him, and eventually watched him get dishonorably discharged for striking an officer. Men he'd once respected. Men who now looked at him like something scraped off their boot. This is touching, Vaughn said. Real touching. Old men protecting the woman who ruined my career. He stood now, anger bleeding through the facade. She lied about me. Filed false accusations. You all know that. We read the report. This was Henry Wallace, age 61, the team's former medic. Multiple witnesses confirmed your behavior. Bullshit witnesses. She poisoned them against me. She was 23 years old, Dalton said quietly. An intelligence analyst trying to do her job, and you made her life hell for 18 months. Don't insult us by pretending otherwise. Vaughn's face flushed red. His hands curled into fists. You don't know what it was like, having her there. Some girl playing soldier getting special treatment because the Navy wanted to look progressive. I was just trying to prepare her for the real world. By cornering her in dark rooms. Wolfe's voice was flat. By threatening her. By putting your hands on her without consent. By making sure she could handle the pressure, but she couldn't, could she? Ran crying to command. Got me discharged. Ruined my whole fucking life. The truth was in his eyes. He actually believed it. He'd rewritten history so many times that his version had become real to him. In Vaughn's world, he was the victim. The system had failed him. The girl had lied. Elliot felt something crack open inside her chest. Not fear this time. Anger. Clean and sharp, and finally aloud. I didn't lie, she said. Everyone turned to look at her. You assaulted me. December 27th, 2015, 23:40 hours, Supply Room C. You cornered me, put your hand over my mouth, said if I screamed you'd make sure I never deployed again, said you'd make me disappear. The words came out steady now, each one a stone she'd carried for 9 years. I hit you with a wrench. Here, she pointed to his shoulder. You still have the scar. That's not a lie. That's evidence. Vaughn stared at her. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered across his face, guilt recognition. But it vanished, replaced by cold rage. You're exactly the same, he said, still making up stories, still playing the victim. He threw a $20 bill on the bar. Keep the change, Scout. You're gonna need it. He started toward the door, then stopped, turned back, looked directly at the assembled men. You old bastards can't watch her 24/7. Jobs, lives. Eventually you'll look away. His eyes found Elliot. And when you do, we're gonna finish our conversation. Just you and me. Like we should have done 9 years ago. The threat hung in the air, crystal clear. This isn't over, Vaughn said. Not even close. He walked out. The door swung shut. The rain continued its steady percussion. For several long seconds, nobody moved. Then Elliot's knees went weak and she grabbed the bar for support. The adrenaline dump hit her all at once, shaking hands, racing heart, the familiar taste of copper fear in her mouth. Dalton was beside her in 3 strides, steadying her with gentle hands that had once carried 50 caliber machine guns. Easy. Breathe. You're safe. I'm not, she whispered. You don't understand. He's not going to stop. Neither are we. Dalton's voice was firm. Look at me, Elliot. Look at me. She met his eyes, found steel there, and something else. Regret. We should have protected you better the first time. I should have. I knew Vaughn was trouble and I didn't push hard enough to remove him. Dalton's jaw worked. I'm not making that mistake again. None of us are. The other men had closed ranks around them now. Gerald Morrison, age 59, the team's former signals intelligence specialist. Thomas Riley, age 62, weapons specialist. Each one a veteran of Desert Storm of Somalia of 2 decades defending things they believed in. How long has he been watching me? Elliot asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Dalton exchanged glances with Morrison. The tech specialist cleared his throat. 4 months, maybe longer. He hired a private investigator in July. Got your address, your work schedule, your routines. Morrison looked apologetic. One of our intelligence contacts flagged it. We've been running surveillance on the anchor for 3 weeks, making sure he didn't try anything. 4 months. All that time thinking she was safe building a quiet life, and she'd been in crosshairs she couldn't see. Why didn't you tell me? Because we hoped he'd just watch and eventually give up. Dalton's expression was grim. We were wrong. He's escalating. Elliot's mind raced through the implications. Vaughn had resources, he had skills, he had nothing to lose, no career, no family, no future except the one built on rage and revenge. You need to get a restraining order, Riley said. Document everything, build a legal case. Legal doesn't stop a bullet, Wolf muttered. No, Dalton agreed. But we do. We'll set up a rotation. Round-the-clock surveillance. He won't get within 50 feet of you. For how long? Elliot heard the exhaustion in her own voice. You all have lives, families. You can't just... We can and we will. Dalton's tone left no room for argument. You're ours, Elliot. You were part of Team 5, which makes you family. Family protects family. That's not negotiable. Something warm and painful lodged in her throat. These men had failed her once. They knew it. They carried that failure the same way she carried her scars. And now they were offering the protection she should have had 9 years ago. Thank you, she whispered. The bar's other patrons had started cautiously returning to their conversations, though nervous glances kept darting toward the door. Elliot forced herself to move to return to work to pretend the world hadn't just tilted on its axis again. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of automatic actions. Pour drinks, take payment, smile when appropriate. But underneath her mind wouldn't stop calculating. Vaughn's probable location, his likely next move, the distance to each exit, the weight of the Glock beneath the bar. At 10:15, she noticed Morrison on his phone, fingers flying across the screen. with the speed of someone who'd once intercepted enemy communications for a living. At 10:23, he showed Dalton something. Dalton's expression went flat. They approached the bar during a lull. "We need to talk," Dalton said quietly. "Back office, now." Her stomach dropped. "What is it? Just come." The office was cramped, a desk drowning in paperwork, a filing cabinet, a small safe. Dalton closed the door. The 6 other team members crowded in their presence, both comforting and terrifying because it meant this was serious. Morrison turned his phone screen toward her. "This was posted to a dark web veteran forum 40 minutes ago." The post was anonymous, but she recognized Vaughn's voice in every word. "Finally found the bitch who destroyed my career." Scout thought she could hide in Charleston serving drinks. Thought her lies would protect her forever. But lies always catch up. So do consequences. Time to settle old debts, the right way, the permanent way. Below it, a photo, taken through the anchor's window, of Elliot behind the bar, tonight. "Jesus," she breathed. "There's more." Morrison swiped. Another post time-stamped 20 minutes ago. Old guard showed up. Typical. They'll protect her as long as they can, but old men sleep eventually. And I've got all the time in the world. "He's watching right now," Wolf said. "Probably across the street or in a vehicle with line of sight." Elliot's skin crawled. She resisted the urge to look toward the windows. "We sweep the perimeter," Dalton ordered. "Teams of 2. Riley and Wolf take north. Morrison and Wallace south. I stay with Elliot." "What about police?" Elliot asked. "This is a direct threat. I called Officer Stevens." Dalton meant Jack Stevens, a local cop who'd served in Bosnia in '96, who owed Dalton his life and didn't forget debts. "He's coming by. Unofficial visit. We'll show him the posts, get it on record, start the paperwork for a restraining order." It felt inadequate, like bringing a knife to a gunfight, but it was something. The teams deployed. Dalton stayed close, his presence solid and reassuring. Elliot tried to focus on work, but every customer who walked through the door made her flinch. Every shadow beyond the windows could be Vaughn. At 10:45, Officer Stevens arrived in civilian clothes, technically off duty, but carrying the authority of his badge in every movement. He was 52, graying with the cautious eyes of someone who'd seen too much. "Ray," he clasped Dalton's hand. "Got your message. What's the situation?" They showed him everything. The forum posts, Elliot's statement about the bar confrontation, the history from Afghanistan. Stevens took notes, his expression growing darker with each revelation. "This is enough for a temporary restraining order. I can expedite it." He looked at Elliot. "But you need to understand, a piece of paper doesn't stop someone determined. You need to be smart. Vary your routine. Don't go anywhere alone. Consider staying somewhere else for a while." "She can stay at my place," Dalton offered immediately. "Guest room, secure building, military-grade locks." Elliot wanted to argue, to insist she could handle herself. But the truth was, she was terrified. Vaughn wasn't just angry, he was obsessed. And obsessed men didn't stop until they were stopped. "Okay," she agreed. "Thank you." Stevens left at 11:10, promising to fast-track the paperwork. The surveillance teams reported back no sign of Vaughn in the immediate area, but several vehicles with occupants who could be conducting counter-surveillance. Impossible to be sure. At 11:30, Elliot announced last call. The remaining customers drained their drinks and filed out. By 11:45, only the team remained. "We need to lock this place down," Dalton said. "Secure all entrances. Check the—" The lights died, complete, total, instant darkness. Elliot's heart stopped. The emergency lights should have kicked in. They didn't. "Down!" Dalton's command cut through the blackness. "Everyone down!" She dropped behind the bar, hand finding the Glock muscle memory from 1,000 drills. Her ears strained, listening. Their footsteps, multiple, moving with tactical precision, glass shattered. Not the front windows, the back, someone breaching through the office. Then the world exploded. Flashbang grenades. 2, 3. The sound was apocalyptic in the enclosed space, a physical force that turned thought to static. Light seared through Elliot's closed eyelids. Even behind the bar, even with her hands over her ears, the concussive force was overwhelming. Smoke followed, thick, chemical, filling the bar in seconds. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard gunfire, suppressed weapons, professional. Not the random spray of amateurs controlled 3-round bursts. Voices shouted, the team returning fire. Muzzle flashes strobed through the smoke like lightning in storm clouds. Hands grabbed Elliot from behind. She twisted, tried to fight, but the Glock was torn from her grip. Something hard slammed into her head, gun butt probably, and stars exploded across her vision. The world tilted. She was being dragged backwards toward the broken window. Elliot! Dalton's voice, distant, desperate. She tried to scream, couldn't get air. The smoke was choking her. Blood ran down her face from where she'd been hit. Her vision tunneled. She caught fragmented glimpses through the chaos, the team trying to reach her but pinned down by suppressing fire. Professional soldiers, even in their 60s, but they'd been caught off guard, unarmed, outnumbered. She was lifted, thrown, landed hard on something, truck bed maybe. Metal, cold, zip ties bit into her wrists, hood yanked over her head. The world went black. The vehicle lurched into motion. She could hear sirens in the distance, but they were growing fainter. Whoever had her was moving fast, had planned the route, knew exactly where to go. Time lost meaning under the hood. Could have been 5 minutes. Could have been 50. The vehicle made multiple turns, left-right straightaways, loops designed to confuse and evade. When it finally stopped, rough hands hauled her out. She stumbled, still blind, and was half dragged across uneven ground. Gravel, then concrete, then the echo of a large enclosed space. Warehouse. Had to be. She was shoved into a chair. Zip ties secured her ankles, more restraints around her chest, binding her to the chair back. The hood was ripped off. She blinked against sudden light. Fluorescent, harsh, industrial. 4 men stood in a rough semicircle in front of her. She recognized 3 from wanted posters and veteran databases her old intelligence contacts had shared, former military, dishonorably discharged, dangerous. And in the center, smiling that terrible smile, was Derek Vaughn. "Hello again, Scout." He crouched to her eye level. "Miss me?" Blood dripped from the wound on her head, warm and sticky. Her vision swam, concussion probably. But she forced herself to focus, analyze, survive. The warehouse was old, Port of Charleston, based on the salt smell and distant foghorns. Single-story, metal construction, 2 visible exits, large roll-up door, and a personnel door to the right. Vaughn's team was equipped like professionals. Tactical vests, suppressed firearms, military-grade communications gear. This wasn't improvised rage. This was planned, funded, organized. "You're wondering how long I've been planning this?" Vaughn said, reading her expression. "The answer is 8 years. 8 years of losing everything because of you. My career, my family, my future, all because you couldn't handle military culture. You assaulted me." Her voice came out hoarse but steady. "I trained you. I tried to make you stronger, and you repaid me by filing false accusations." There was no point arguing with delusion. She'd learned that 9 years ago. "What do you want?" She needed to buy time. Dalton and the team would be looking for her. Stevens would have police mobilized. The question was whether they'd find her before Vaughn did whatever he planned. "Confession." Vaughn walked to a tripod she hadn't noticed. A camera. Professional quality. "You're going to tell the truth, on video, admit you lied, that I never touched you, that you made it all up for attention." "No." "Yes." He moved faster than she expected, backhanding her across the face. Pain exploded through her cheek. "You don't get to say no anymore, Scout. Those days are over." He hit her again and again, professional strikes designed to hurt without causing unconsciousness. She'd been trained to resist interrogation, but training and reality were different countries. "Stop!" she gasped. "Please, say it. Say you lied. I didn't." Another blow. Her lips split. Blood filled her mouth. "You've got all night," Vaughn said. And I've got 8 years of patience. Eventually you'll break. They all do. Through the pain, through the fear, a cold certainty settled in Elliot's chest. This was always where it was going to end. From the moment she'd filed that first report in Afghanistan, the trajectory had been set. Vaughn couldn't let it go, couldn't accept responsibility, couldn't heal. So it would end here, in blood, in darkness, in a warehouse by the water. Unless Dalton found her, unless she could stall long enough, unless she could create an opportunity. Okay, she said the word thick with blood. Okay, I'll do it. I'll confess. Just give me a minute to think, to write it properly. Vaughn studied her, suspicious, but also eager, wanting this too badly to see the trap. Smart, he finally said. Yeah, we want it believable, detailed. He grabbed paper and pen from a nearby crate. You've got 30 minutes. Write every lie you told, every false accusation. Make it good. He dropped the supplies in her lap, cut the zip ties on her wrists. Elliot picked up the pen with shaking hands. Started writing, slowly, buying every second she could and praying that somewhere in the Charleston night the cavalry was coming. The pen scratched across paper with agonizing slowness. Elliot forced her hand to move like someone fighting through molasses, forming each letter with deliberate imprecision, crossing out words, starting over. The performance of someone wrestling with conscience when really she was wrestling with time. 30 minutes, Vaughn had said. She'd stretch it to 45 if she could. The warehouse was cavernous and cold. Sodium lights hung from rusted chains, casting pools of sickly yellow across oil-stained concrete. Maritime sounds filtered through gaps in the metal walls. Foghorn's water lapping against pier supports, the distant clang of shipping containers. Port of Charleston, definitely, which meant they were somewhere in the industrial maze of Pier 19 or 20. Vaughn paced while she wrote. His 3 accomplices had taken up positions, one by each exit, one watching the perimeter through a gap in the roll-up door. Military discipline still evident in their movements despite the dishonorable discharges. She recognized the type, had analyzed their psych profiles back when she'd done intelligence work. Veterans who'd left service angry, who'd found each other in the dark corners of the internet where grievance fermented into extremism. Men who needed someone to blame for lives that hadn't turned out as promised. The man by the north exit was Marcus Roth, 39, former Marine. Discharged for aggravated assault in 2017. 3 arrests since for bar fights. Restraining order from his ex-wife. Tyler Garrett watched the South, 35. Former Army Ranger, theft of government property, court-martialed after stealing and selling equipment from his supply unit. Kevin Shaw monitored the main door, 41. Former Navy electronics technician, drugs, multiple failed rehab attempts. And Vaughn, the ringleader, the true believer who'd convinced the others that their failures were everyone else's fault. How's it coming? Vaughn stopped pacing, loomed over her shoulder. Elliot let her hand tremble. It's hard, remembering everything, getting the details right. Take your time. I want it perfect. He smiled. This is going on YouTube, Twitter, every military forum. Everyone's going to know the truth about you. She nodded, kept writing. The confession was gibberish, fragments of sentences, contradictory statements, nothing coherent. But from Vaughn's position, it looked like someone struggling with a difficult admission. Midnight passed, then 12:15. Her head throbbed where Vaughn had pistol-whipped her during the extraction. Blood had dried in her hair, sticky and matted. Her ribs ached from being thrown into the truck bed. But the pain was useful, kept her sharp, focused. She thought about Dalton, about the team they'd seen her taken, would have immediately moved into action. Dalton had 40 years of tactical experience. He'd know the playbook for hostage extraction. First, secure the scene, account for all team members, assess injuries, second, intelligence gathering, traffic cameras, witness statements, electronic surveillance. Third, resource mobilization. Call in every favor. Contact every asset. Fourth, tracking. Find the target. Develop approach options. Fifth, execute. The question was timing. How long would each phase take? The abduction had happened at approximately 11:45. Call it midnight for the team to regroup and start coordinating. They'd need to identify which warehouse in the port district, hundreds of possibilities across 20 square miles of industrial waterfront. She might have hours, she might have minutes. Finished yet? Vaughn's patience was wearing thin. Almost, just the ending is hard. Why, it's simple. You lied, you admit it. Done. I need to explain why. Make it believable. You said you wanted details. He grunted acceptance, resumed pacing. Elliot's mind raced through SEER protocols, survival, evasion, resistance, escape. She'd completed the training at age 22, remembered the instructors drilling into them. In captivity, your job is to stay alive and create opportunities. Nothing else matters. Survival. She was alive, injured but functional. Evasion failed. She was captured. Resistance in progress. Buying time. Escape. The only question that mattered. 4 armed men. Zip ties on her ankles. No weapons within reach. Warehouse with limited exits. Poor odds for direct confrontation. But combat wasn't always direct. She studied the space with peripheral vision, careful not to let Vaughn notice her reconnaissance. The warehouse was old, probably dating back to the 1970s. Metal construction showed rust and corrosion. Electrical system was antiquated, exposed conduit junction boxes with missing covers. Fire suppression system looked non-functional, pipes dry and flaking. Vulnerabilities everywhere if you knew where to look. Okay. She set down the pen, hands still shaking. Not performance this time, real tremor from adrenaline and injury. I've written it, but I can't say it on camera, not like this. I look terrible, beaten, they'll think you forced me. Vaughn considered. So it won't work. You want people to believe I'm confessing voluntarily, that I'm finally telling the truth after years of guilt. She met his eyes, forced herself not to look away. Let me clean up, fix my face, do this properly. For a long moment he stared at her, calculating, suspicious. Then he smiled. Smart. Yeah. Okay. We do this right. He turned to Roth. There's a bathroom in the back. Take her. Let her wash up, but Marcus, you watch her every second. Roth crossed the warehouse floor, cut the zip ties around her ankles. Hauled her up by the arm. Elliot's legs nearly buckled, combination of restricted circulation and genuine weakness. The bathroom was a nightmare of cracked porcelain and black mold. Single bulb overhead, rust-stained sink, mirror so filthy she could barely see her reflection. Roth stood in the doorway, hand on his holstered Glock. Make it quick. Elliot turned on the faucet. Water ran brown for several seconds before clearing. She cupped her hands, brought water to her face. The cold was shocking, clarifying. In the mirror's grimy surface, she assessed the damage. Split lip, swelling around her left eye. The head wound had stopped bleeding but matted her hair. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who'd been beaten. But beneath the injuries, her mind was cataloging. The bathroom had a window. Small, maybe 18 inches square, painted shut, too small to climb through anyway. The door opened inward. Single deadbolt, no key in the lock. Roth filled the doorway completely. No escape route here. Hurry up, Roth growled. She washed slowly, carefully, cleaning blood from her hair, dabbing at her split lip, buying seconds that accumulated into minutes. Enough! Roth grabbed her arm, dragged her back to the main space. Vaughn had set up the camera. Professional equipment, he'd spent money on this. Planned it meticulously. The tripod was positioned to frame the chair against a blank wall. Lighting adjusted. He'd even set up a small teleprompter screen. Sit, he pointed. Elliot sat, watched him zip tie her ankles again, the plastic bit into skin already raw from previous restraints. Now. Vaughn positioned himself behind the camera. "You're going to read what you wrote. Clearly. Looking at the camera. No crying, no dramatics, just the facts." He pressed record. Red light blinked on. Elliot looked at the camera lens, took a breath. Her phone buzzed. Everyone froze. Vaughn's expression went from anticipation to fury in a heartbeat. "You still have your phone!" "Back pocket. I didn't think—" He lunged forward, yanked it from her jeans, looked at the screen. His face went pale. "What is it?" Garrett called from his position. Vaughn turned the phone around. On the screen, a text message from a blocked number. "We know where you are. Warehouse C Pier 19. You have one chance to surrender. Release her and walk away. You have 30 minutes. Silence crashed through the warehouse like a physical force. Then Vaughn laughed, high and sharp and wrong. "Bluffing. They're bluffing. There's no way they found us this fast." "Unless they put a tracker in her," Roth said slowly. All eyes turned to Elliot. Vaughn grabbed her by the hair, yanked her head back. Did those old bastards put a GPS on you?" "No, I don't know how they—" "Check her." Vaughn shoved her forward. "Every inch. Find it." Roth and Shaw converged. Rough hands patted her down. Checking pockets, seams, shoes. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. Dalton's team hadn't had time to plant a tracker, but they'd found her anyway. "Clean," Roth reported. "Then how?" Vaughn spun, paranoia blooming. "How did they find us?" Elliot knew, had worked with signals intelligence long enough to understand. Morrison. Gerald Wraith Morrison, their tech specialist, former NSA. He'd probably hacked traffic camera feeds, tracked the van's route, cross-referenced timing and direction to narrow the search zone. Then thermal imaging from a drone legal to own, easy to deploy to identify which warehouse showed heat signatures. Old skills applied with new technology. That was Dalton's team, experience married to innovation. "We need to move," Garrett said. "If they know where we are, no." Vaughn's voice went flat, cold. "They're not taking this from me. Not again." He pulled his Sig Sauer, checked the magazine. "We finish this, right now." He grabbed Elliot's confession from where she'd left it, scanned the page, his expression darkened as he read. "What the fuck is this? This is gibberish, nonsense." He crumpled the paper, threw it at her. "You were stalling." No point denying it. "Yes. Clever, real clever, Scout." He pressed the gun against her forehead. "But you're not clever enough. You know what, forget the confession, forget the video. I'll just kill you. Send your body back to those old men in pieces, that'll be message enough." His finger moved to the trigger. Time slowed. Elliot could see every detail with crystalline clarity, the ridges on Vaughn's fingerprint, the slight tremor in his hand, the madness in his eyes. This was it, the moment, no more stalling, no more hoping for rescue. She had one move. Maybe. The zip ties on her ankles were tight but not impossible. If she could hook her feet around the chair legs, generate enough torque. "Derek!" Shaw's voice cut through the tension. "Vehicle approaching. Half click out." Vaughn didn't lower the gun. "Kill the lights. Defensive positions. If they want a fight, we'll give them one." The warehouse plunged into darkness. Elliot heard rapid movement, practiced, military. Vaughn's team taking cover behind shipping containers and equipment. Weapons being readied. Someone racking a shotgun slide. Through gaps in the walls, she saw headlights. Getting closer, then stopping about 200 meters out. Smart. Dalton wasn't driving into an ambush. Minutes passed in electric silence. Elliot's heart hammered so hard, she thought it might crack ribs. The gun was no longer against her head, but Vaughn remained close. She could hear his breathing fast, shallow, panicked. "They're just sitting there," Roth whispered. "What are they doing?" What they were doing, Elliot knew, was planning. 8 men in their late 50s and 60s facing 4 younger armed opponents in a defensive position with a hostage. Terrible tactical equation. Unless you change the variables. Her eyes had adjusted to darkness. Sodium lights from outside filtered through wall gaps, creating angular shadows. She could see shapes, movement. Vaughn was 3 feet to her right. Roth at the north exit. Garrett south, Shaw at the main door. If she could create chaos. Just a few seconds of confusion. Give Dalton's team an opening. The chair she was tied to was old, metal, probably weighed 30 pounds. Her ankles were secured to the front legs, hands free. She took a slow breath, positioned her feet, tested the zip tie's tension, then she rocked. Hard, the chair tipped. She went with it using momentum, crashed sideways into a stack of pallets. Wood splintered. The sound was enormous in the quiet. What the fuck? Vaughn spun toward her. Elliot twisted, got her hands under her, pushed up. The chair came with her still attached to her ankles. She gripped the chair back, swung it like a battering ram. Caught Vaughn in the knees. He went down cursing, firing wild. Muzzle flash lit the warehouse in strobe light bursts. Bullets sparked off metal, ricocheted with banshee screams. "She's loose!" Roth shouted. Elliot ran, awkward. The chair banged against her legs with every step, but she ran toward the cover of shipping containers, toward darkness, toward anything that wasn't standing still. Behind her, chaos erupted. Dalton's team breached, not through the doors, through the windows. Flashbangs preceded them, turning night to noon for 3 blinding seconds. Elliot dove behind a container, crashed down hard. The chair finally broke apart, zip ties still attached to the pieces but no longer connected to each other. She kicked free, scrambled deeper into cover. Gunfire everywhere. The roar of it was overwhelming. Suppressed weapons from Dalton's team, professional 3-round bursts. Unsuppressed from Vaughn's panic firing. She recognized the sound of an M4. Dalton's team had come armed. A figure appeared in her peripheral vision. Elliot grabbed a piece of broken chair, swung with everything she had, connected with someone's head. They dropped. Marcus Roth. Unconscious or dead, she couldn't tell and didn't care. She took his Glock, checked the chamber. Round loaded. Safety off. Now she was armed. The tactical situation clarified through the chaos. Dalton's team had superior positioning and training, but Vaughn's team had youth and desperation. Garrett fired from behind a forklift. His muzzle flash gave away his position. Return fire from Dalton's team. Marcus Wolf, she thought, recognizing the rhythm, forced him to cover. Shaw had retreated to the personnel door, was trying to escape. Henry Wallace cut him off. They grappled. Wallace was 61 and gave away 40 pounds. But he'd been a combat medic, knew every vulnerable point on the human body. Shaw went down. Screaming, knee destroyed. That left Vaughn. Elliot moved through the maze of containers and equipment, Glock raised, following the sound of his breathing. Heavy, panicked, close. She rounded a corner, found herself face to face with him, 3 feet of distance, both armed, both survivors of the same military that had taught them to kill. "You should have stayed quiet," Vaughn said. "Should have accepted what happened and moved on. You should have kept your hands to yourself." They fired simultaneously, both missed. Too close, too fast, too much adrenaline. Vaughn rushed her. 240 versus 125. No contest in a grappling match. He slammed her against a container. Her head bounced off metal. Stars exploded across her vision. The Glock went flying. His hands found her throat, squeezed. "All this," he gasped. "All this because you couldn't handle." Elliot drove her thumb into his injured shoulder. The scar she'd given him 9 years ago. Dug deep into the tissue. Vaughn screamed. His grip loosened. She brought her knee up, connected with his groin. He doubled over. She grabbed his head, slammed it down to meet her rising knee. Cartilage crunched. Blood sprayed. Vaughn staggered back. Elliot dove for the Glock, fingers closed around the grip, came up aiming. But a voice stopped her. "Elliot, stand down!" Dalton. Standing 15 feet away, M4 raised, covering Vaughn. Behind him, the rest of the team, all standing, all armed. Vaughn's team was neutralized. Roth unconscious. Shaw injured. Garrett zip-tied and face down. It was over. Vaughn looked at Dalton, at the team, at Elliot with the gun pointed at his chest. He laughed, broken and bitter. "You can't kill me. Not like this. Not in cold blood." "No," Dalton agreed. "We can't." Vaughn pulled a knife from his belt. Combat blade. 7 inches. the kind designed for one purpose. "But I can make you." He lunged at Elliot. The shot came from 200 meters away, through a gap in the warehouse wall. Gunny Marcus Wolf, Overwatch position, with his old M4 and iron sights and 40 years of experience calculating wind distance and elevation. One shot, center mass. Vaughn dropped. The knife clattered on concrete. For several seconds, nobody moved. The gunshot's echo faded. In its place, the sound of water against pier supports, distant sirens growing closer. Elliot's legs gave out. She sat down hard, Glock still in her hand, and started shaking. Dalton was beside her in 3 strides, gently took the weapon, pulled her into his arms. "You're safe. It's over. You're safe." She couldn't speak, could only shake and cry, and finally let herself feel the terror she'd been suppressing for the last 90 minutes. The rest of the team secured the warehouse. Wallace checked Vaughn, dead, single shot through the heart. Shaw was zip-tied and given basic first aid for his destroyed knee. Roth was coming around, was similarly restrained. Garrett was already secured. Morrison documented everything with his phone camera. Evidence for the inevitable investigation. At 12:58 a.m., Charleston police arrived, 5 units lights blazing. At 1:15 FBI. Agent Rebecca Morrison, no relation to Gerald, took command. By 2 a.m., the warehouse was a crime scene. Yellow tape, evidence markers, forensic photographers capturing every angle. Elliot sat in the back of an ambulance letting a paramedic examine her injuries. Concussion, cracked rib, possibly 2, lacerations, contusions, nothing life-threatening. "You need to go to the hospital," the paramedic said. "That head wound, but later." Elliot's voice was hoarse. "I need to give my statement first while it's fresh." Agent Morrison approached, mid-40s, formerly Army JAG, with the kind of steady competence that put people at ease. "Ms. Brennan, I'm Agent Morrison, FBI. Are you able to answer some questions?" "Yes." They talked for 90 minutes. Elliot recounted everything in clinical detail. The stalking, the abduction, the imprisonment, Vaughn's demands, her escape attempt, the rescue. Morrison recorded it all, asked clarifying questions, took notes. "This is preliminary," Morrison said finally. "We'll need a full deposition, but based on what I'm seeing here, the evidence Vaughn collected, the manifesto we found, the weapons, the forced confinement, this was clearly kidnapping with intent to commit murder. You and Master Chief Dalton's team acted in lawful defense of human life." His team killed someone. "In defense of a hostage from an armed aggressor who'd already committed multiple felonies and was attempting murder. That's textbook justified use of force." Morrison's expression softened slightly. "Ms. Brennan, you're not in trouble. None of you are. You're victims who fought back." Victims. The word sat wrong, but also right. What happens to Shaw and Garrett and Roth? Federal charges, kidnapping, assault, weapons violations, they're looking at 20 to life minimum. Elliot nodded. Justice, not perfect, but something. At 3:30 a.m., Morrison finally released her. "Go to the hospital, get checked out properly. We'll schedule the full deposition for next week." Dalton drove her to MUSC Medical Center. Wallace came along, medic's instinct to ensure proper care. They sat in the emergency room while doctors ran tests. CT scan for the head injury, X-rays for the ribs, blood work. "Concussion grade 2, the doctor reported at 5 a.m. 2 cracked ribs, you're going to hurt for a while, but you'll heal." Physical wounds anyway. They discharged her at 6 with prescriptions for pain management and strict orders to rest. The sun was rising as Dalton drove her to his house, a modest bungalow in West Ashley secured like a small fortress with deadbolts and cameras and sight lines that would make a tactical planner proud. The guest room had clean sheets and blackout curtains. Elliot collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed. "Try to sleep," Dalton said. "I'll be right outside if you need anything." She wanted to sleep. Her body screamed for it. But every time she closed her eyes, she was back in the warehouse. Vaughn's hands around her throat, the gun against her head, the moment when she'd thought she was going to die. At 7 a.m., she gave up, went to the kitchen, found Dalton at the table with coffee and a laptop reviewing news coverage. "Morning," he said quietly. "How are you feeling? Like I got beaten and kidnapped." "Fair assessment." He poured her coffee. "Media's having a field day. Veteran stalker killed in FBI operation. They're treating you like a hero." "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who survived." "Sometimes that's the same thing." She sipped coffee, let the warmth settle her. "Thank you for coming for me." "Always." Dalton met her eyes. "I need you to understand something, Elliot. We failed you 9 years ago. I failed you. I was your team leader. I should have stopped Vaughn the first time he crossed the line. Should have pushed harder, made more noise, protected you better. You tried, not hard enough, and that failure has haunted me every day since you left the service." His jaw worked. "So when we got word he was stalking you, I made a promise, not again, never again, whatever it took. You could have died tonight. Worth it. Simple. Certain. Your family, Elliot. Team 5 looks after its own. That's not negotiable." Something cracked open in her chest, the wall she'd built between herself and trust, between herself and the idea that people would actually protect her. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just know you're not alone anymore." They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching morning light paint the kitchen gold. Her phone buzzed. She almost didn't check it, but some instinct made her look. A text from an unknown number. "I'm one of the women from 2014. I saw the news. Thank you for fighting back. You saved all of us by not staying quiet. You're a hero." Then another former Navy. "Vaughn harassed me in 2013, left the service because of it. Saw what you did. I'm ready to tell my story now." And another. And another. Women she'd never met, who'd suffered the same abuse, who'd stayed silent because the system told them to, who were silent no more. By noon, 47 messages. By evening, over 200. The dam had broken. The messages kept coming. By the end of the first week, Elliot had received over 800. Women from every branch of service. Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard. Each with a story that echoed her own in nauseating detail. Different names, different bases, different years, but the same pattern of harassment, assault, institutional betrayal, and silence. She read them all. It took hours each day sitting at Dalton's kitchen table with coffee that went cold while she absorbed story after story of trauma. Some were clinical and detached, others raw with pain. A few asked for advice. Many just needed someone to acknowledge what had happened to them. Elliot responded to every single one. By day 10, major news networks were calling. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. They wanted interviews, wanted her story, wanted to make her a symbol of something. They each had their own angle, their own narrative to construct around her survival. She declined them all, wasn't ready, might never be ready. But then on day 12, a different call came. A blocked number she almost didn't answer. "Ms. Brennan, this is Senator Patricia Hawthorne, chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee. I'd like to talk to you about testifying." Elliot's hand tightened on the phone. Testifying about what? Military sexual harassment and assault, the systemic failures that enabled Derek Vaughn to terrorize multiple women over a decade, the cover-ups, the retaliation against victims who came forward. Hawthorne's voice was calm, professional, but edged with steel. "We're convening hearings. I'd like you to be our lead witness. I don't know if I can. I understand this is difficult, but Ms. Brennan, you have a unique platform right now. National attention. Credibility that comes from having survived not just the initial assault, but everything that followed. Your testimony could change policy, could protect the next generation of service members." Elliot looked around Dalton's kitchen, at the coffee cups and case files, at the stack of printed messages from other victims. At her own reflection in the window, still healing, still haunted, but still here. "When?" she asked. 3 weeks later, she stood in the Senate hearing room wearing the Navy dress uniform she'd sworn she'd never put on again. The blues felt simultaneously foreign and familiar, like putting on armor she'd tried to discard. But that still fit perfectly. The room was packed. Cameras, press, spectators. Behind her in the gallery, Dalton and the entire team sat in their own dress uniforms, a show of solidarity that made her throat tight. Senator Hawthorne called the hearing to order at 10 a.m. sharp. Today we examine a failure of institutional accountability that has persisted for decades, the military's handling or mishandling of sexual harassment and assault within its ranks. Hawthorne's gaze swept the room. Our first witness is Petty Officer Second Class Elliot Brennan, United States Navy retired. Ms. Brennan, please proceed with your opening statement. Elliot stood, approached the witness table, sat, adjusted the microphone. For a moment, looking out at the assembled senators and cameras and crowd, her mind went blank. The prepared statement she'd rehearsed evaporated. Then she found Dalton's eyes in the gallery. He gave a small nod. She began. Honorable members of the committee, my name is Elliot Brennan. I served as an intelligence specialist with the United States Navy from 2013 to 2018. During that time, I was embedded with SEAL Team 5 in Afghanistan from 2014 to 2016. Her voice was steady, clinical, the same tone she'd used when delivering intelligence briefings. During those 18 months, I was systematically harassed by Chief Petty Officer Derek Vaughn. The harassment began with verbal abuse, comments about my gender, my competence, my right to be in a combat zone. It escalated to sabotage equipment missing before patrol's intelligence reports deleted false accusations about my work. She paused, drank water, continued. On December 27th, 2015, at approximately 23:40 hours, Chief Vaughn cornered me in a supply room. He put his hand over my mouth, told me I didn't belong in the military, said if I screamed he'd make sure I never deployed again. He attempted to assault me sexually. I defended myself by striking him with a wrench. In the gallery, someone gasped. Elliot didn't look. I reported the incident through proper channels. My report was filed with my commanding officer, who referred it to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. An investigation was opened. I was interviewed 3 times, so was Chief Vaughn, so were potential witnesses. Now the hard part. The investigation was concluded as inconclusive. Insufficient evidence to substantiate my claims or Chief Vaughn's counterclaim that I had attacked him unprovoked. I was counseled that continuing to pursue the matter would be detrimental to unit cohesion and my career prospects. Chief Vaughn remained in his position. I was advised to request transfer. Senator Hawthorne leaned forward. Let me make sure I understand. You were assaulted, you reported it, and you were the one told to leave. Yes, ma'am. What happened to Chief Vaughn? He was discharged 6 months later for striking a superior officer, an unrelated incident. But he blamed me for his discharge, blamed me for losing his career, his family, his future. And he stalked you for 8 years following his discharge. Yes, ma'am. Hired a private investigator to locate me, planned my abduction for at least 4 months, recruited 3 other dishonorably discharged veterans to help him. On November 15th of this year, he executed that plan, kidnapped me from my workplace, held me captive, intended to force a false confession, and then kill me. The room was dead silent now. I'm alive because Master Chief Raymond Dalton and 7 other members of SEAL Team 5, all retired, all in their late 50s to late 60s, conducted an unauthorized rescue operation. Chief Vaughn was killed during that operation after he attempted to stab me with a combat knife. Elliot met Hawthorne's eyes directly. This didn't have to happen. If the Navy had properly investigated my initial report, if they'd held Chief Vaughn accountable, if they'd protected me instead of protecting his career, he'd probably still be alive. His 3 accomplices wouldn't be in federal prison, and I wouldn't have spent 9 years looking over my shoulder. How many times did you report Chief Vaughn's behavior? This from Senator Marcus Westfield, ranking minority member. 4 times total. The first 3 were verbal harassment that my direct supervisor promised to handle informally. The 4th was the assault. And you have documentation of these reports? I have copies of the written reports I filed. The electronic versions were deleted from official systems. I only have them because I maintained personal backups against policy. Why did you keep personal copies if it violated policy? Elliot allowed herself a small bitter smile. Because I knew the official versions would disappear, and I was right. Westfield nodded slowly. Ms. Brennan, since the news of your case broke, how many other victims have contacted you? As of this morning, 943. The number landed like a bomb. Senators exchanged glances, cameras flashed. 943 women, Hawthorne repeated. All service members, active duty reserve and veteran, all branches, dating back to the 1980s in some cases. Have you shared this information with the Department of Defense? I've compiled it into a database. Names, dates, units, details of harassment or assault and outcomes of any reports filed. I'm prepared to provide it to this committee and to DOD investigators. Senator James Carrington, former Army colonel, spoke up. Ms. Brennan, I have to ask, and I mean no disrespect, but how do you know these reports are legitimate? In the age of social media, anyone can make accusations. Elliot had expected this. I've personally verified 312 cases by cross-referencing service records, unit assignments, and official documentation. The remainder I've assessed for credibility based on my intelligence training. I'm confident that over 90% are legitimate. And sir, with respect, the question shouldn't be whether victims are lying. It should be why 900 women felt they had to contact a stranger to be heard instead of trusting their chain of command. Carrington had the grace to look chagrined. The hearing continued for 6 hours. Elliot answered every question, provided documentation, explained the culture of silence, detailed how predators like Vaughn learned to exploit systems designed to protect them. She talked about the toll, the PTSD, the nightmares, the way she still checked exits and kept a gun within reach. The relationships she'd never pursued because trust was a currency she couldn't afford. And she talked about the women who didn't survive, the suicides, the drug overdoses, the ones who'd simply given up. By 4 p.m., when Hawthorne finally called, Reese Elliott was exhausted, wrung out, but also lighter somehow, as if speaking the truth in an official forum had shifted some weight she'd been carrying. In the hallway outside, she was mobbed by reporters, microphones thrust in her face, questions shouted over each other. Dalton and the team formed a protective barrier, creating space for her to breathe. Ms. Brennan, what do you want to see happen as a result of your testimony? She stopped, turned to face the cameras directly. I want mandatory independent review of all harassment and assault complaints. I want civilian oversight of military investigations. I want statute of limitations extended so victims aren't running out of time while they work up the courage to report. I want protection for whistleblowers, and I want every service member to know that if they come forward, they will be believed and protected, not silenced and blamed. Do you think that's realistic? I think it has to be, because the alternative is more victims, more cover-ups, more women like me who spend years waiting for the nightmare to catch up to them. The clip went viral. By evening, it had 10 million views. By the next morning, every major news outlet was running it. Public pressure mounted. Veterans groups issued statements of support. Advocacy organizations amplified the message. Even some active duty service members risking their careers spoke up anonymously about their own experiences. 2 weeks after her testimony, the Senate Armed Services Committee voted unanimously to advance the Military Justice Improvement Act. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. The Navy announced an independent review of all sexual assault cases from the past 20 years. The Inspector General opened investigations into multiple commands. And quietly, without fanfare, 17 senior officers were removed from their positions. Some retired, some were reassigned. A few faced courts-martial for obstruction of justice. Elliot watched it unfold from Dalton's house where she was still staying. The guest room had become permanent for now. She wasn't ready to be alone yet. On a cold January morning, 6 weeks after the hearing, Agent Rebecca Morrison called. Ms. Brennan, we've completed our investigation into Derek Vaughn's activities. I thought you'd want to know what we found. Elliot braced herself. Go ahead. Vaughn had been planning this for exactly 8 years. We found journals, emails, surveillance photos dating back to 2016. He'd tracked every move you made after you left the service, every address, every job, every routine. Elliot's stomach turned. His three accomplices, Shaw, Garrett, and Roth, met him at a veteran support group in 2020. Vaughn recruited them by targeting men who blamed the military or society for their failures, radicalized them slowly over years, provided weapons training, conducted rehearsals of the abduction. How did they fund it? Vaughn's father, retired Admiral Richard Vaughn. Elliot's blood went cold. The Admiral knew, not about the kidnapping specifically, but he provided his son with substantial financial support over the years, $50,000 in 2022 alone. When we questioned him, he claimed he thought Derek was getting back on his feet. But we found evidence suggesting he knew Derek was stalking you. What evidence? Emails. In 2023, Derek sent his father photos of you, detailed reports on your location, asked for advice on how to handle the scout situation. Admiral Vaughn's response was, quote, "Do what you need to do to clear your name. We're treating that as conspiracy to commit kidnapping." The room spun. An admiral, a man who'd sworn to protect and defend, had helped his son hunt her. Where is he now? Arrested this morning, federal charges. He's looking at 8 to 15 years, Justice. Cold and insufficient, but justice. Thank you for telling me. There's one more thing. We found something in Vaughn's storage unit you should see. Can I bring it to you? Morrison arrived an hour later carrying a banker's box, set it on Dalton's kitchen table. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, handwritten, dating back years. Elliot picked one up at random. Read it. "Dear Scout, I'm writing to tell you I'm sorry for how things ended. I was wrong about you. You were tough enough. You were always tough enough. I just couldn't handle being wrong. Derek Vaughn, March 20, and another one. Scout. I saw you on the news today. You look good. Happy maybe. I'm not. Haven't been since Afghanistan, since I lost everything because I couldn't control my anger. I think about you every day. Wish I could take it back. August 2019. And another. You probably think I hate you. I don't. I hate what you represent, my failure, my shame, my inability to be the man I thought I was, but I don't hate you. I just can't let you go. Because if I do, I have to face what I am. And I can't do that." November 2023. The letters painted a portrait of a man slowly unraveling, caught between genuine remorse and inability to accept responsibility, between knowing he was wrong and needing someone else to blame. "He never sent these," Morrison said quietly. "Just wrote them, like a diary. His therapist, yes, he was in therapy, said he was trying to process, but couldn't break through his own narrative." Elliot set the letters down. He was sick. He was dangerous. The two aren't mutually exclusive. I know, but part of me wonders if the system had worked differently. If he'd gotten real help instead of being enabled, could he have been saved? Maybe. But that's not your burden to carry. You did everything right, reported, fought back, survived. What happened to Vaughn after that, the choices he made, the help he didn't seek, the people who failed to intervene, that's on them. Morrison left the box, said Elliot could do whatever she wanted with it. That night, she burned the letters in Dalton's fireplace, watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. It felt symbolic, cathartic, the end of something. But endings were complicated. 3 months after the hearing, Elliot received a formal offer. Department of Defense, Office of Victim Advocacy, coordinator position, salary $95,000, full benefits. Her job would be helping service members report harassment and assault through the new independent review system. She stared at the offer letter for a long time. "What are you thinking?" Dalton asked. They'd fallen into a routine coffee every morning, quiet conversation, the comfortable rhythm of people who understood each other's senses. "That I'm not qualified for this. Elliot, you created a database of 900 victims, testified before Congress, changed military policy. If you're not qualified, nobody is. I'm not a lawyer, not a counselor, just someone who survived. That's exactly why you're qualified. You know what they're going through. You know how the system fails. You know what needs to change. He paused. But it's your choice. Nobody would blame you for walking away, doing something completely different. You've earned the right to peace. Peace. What did that even look like? Elliot thought about the messages still coming in. Women who'd stayed silent for decades, who saw her story and found courage, who needed someone to believe them. She thought about Petty Officer Jennifer Wright, dead at 27, suicide after her harassment complaint was dismissed. She thought about all the Jennifers, the ones who didn't make it. "I'll take the job," she said. The first day at the Pentagon was surreal. Security clearance, ID badge, office in the E-ring with a view of the parking lot, everything official and proper and nothing like the warehouse or the bar or any of the dark places she'd survived. Her first case came within hours. A young woman, 22, Marine Lance Corporal, crying in Elliot's office telling a story that could have been Elliot's own, except with different names and a different base. "I reported him, my gunnery sergeant, and they told me I misunderstood his intentions, that he was just being friendly, but he wasn't. He wasn't." Elliot listened, really listened. Then she opened the new case management system independent review, civilian oversight mandatory advocacy, and started the process. "I believe you," she said, "and we're going to fix this." The case took 6 weeks, but at the end the gunnery sergeant was removed from his position. Court-martialed, convicted. The Lance Corporal got transferred to a new unit with a formal commendation for her courage in reporting. It was one case, one person, but it mattered. Over the next 6 months, Elliot handled 73 cases. Some were simple, clear violations, clear evidence, clear outcomes. Others were messy, he said, she said, with no witnesses. Historical cases where evidence had degraded. Situations where both parties had legitimate grievances. She learned that justice wasn't always clean. Sometimes it was incremental. Sometimes it was just making sure someone was heard and believed even if the system couldn't punish the perpetrator. But the system was changing, slowly. The new protocols were working. Reports were being taken seriously. Investigations were independent. Retaliation was being punished. Progress. In June, she got a call from Maggie Sullivan, former Army lieutenant, one of Vaughn's victims from 2013. They'd been corresponding since Elliot's testimony. "I want to start something," Maggie said. "A nonprofit, support for military sexual harassment survivors, counseling, legal help, advocacy. I've got funding lined up, but I need a co-founder, someone who knows the system, someone victims will trust. I have a full-time job. Nights and weekends, we'll start small, build it up. Elliot, there are thousands of people who need this. The DoD programs are great, but some survivors can't trust any government system. They need something independent." Elliot thought about the messages, the women who'd found her because official channels had failed them. "What would we call it? I was thinking Silent No More." They filed the paperwork in July, launched the website in August. By September, they had 300 members. By December, over 2,000. The nonprofit provided counseling, referrals, legal support, advocacy training, and community. A place where survivors could connect with others who understood, who believed, who wouldn't judge or dismiss or blame. Elliot ran the advocacy program, teaching survivors how to navigate the reporting process, how to document evidence, how to protect themselves from retaliation, all the things she'd learned the hard way. On the 1-year anniversary of the kidnapping, Elliot organized a vigil. Silent No More members gathered outside the Pentagon. Each held a candle. Each read the name of someone who hadn't survived suicide, overdose, violence. 47 names, 47 lights in the darkness. Elliot read Jennifer Wright's name. Petty Officer, 27. Offenders 2016 after her harassment complaint was dismissed. "She deserved better," Elliot said to the assembled crowd. "They all did. We're here to make sure the next generation gets better, gets belief, gets justice, gets protection." The vigil was covered by every major network. The images, veterans holding candles, reading names, standing in solidarity, became iconic. The next week, the Secretary of Defense announced expanded funding for victim services. New training protocols, stronger accountability measures, more progress, but the work wasn't finished, would probably never be finished, because systems changed slowly and culture changed even slower. Elliot kept going. DOD by day, Silent No More by night, testifying at hearings, training advocates, answering calls from survivors who needed someone to believe them. It was exhausting, fulfilling, necessary, and somewhere along the way she started healing. Not completely. The nightmares still came sometimes. She still checked exits, still carried a gun, still felt her heart race when someone approached from behind. But she also laughed more, slept better, started dating tentatively, carefully, but started. Went to therapy, joined Dalton and the team for Sunday dinners that felt like family. Found purpose in the pain. 18 months after the hearing, the Navy contacted her. They were creating a new award, the Morrison Service Award, recognizing service members who reported misconduct despite personal cost. They wanted to name it after her. "It should be the Wright Award," Elliot said. "After Jennifer Wright, she reported, she fought, and she didn't survive. She deserves to be remembered." The Navy agreed. The award became the Wright-Brennan Award, honoring both the ones who didn't make it and the ones who did. The first ceremony was held at the Pentagon in March. The first recipient was a young female Marine, 24, had reported her commanding officer for harassment, faced retaliation, kept fighting. Eventually won. She reminded Elliot of herself at that age. Scared but determined, damaged but not broken. After the ceremony, the Marine approached Elliot. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say thank you for testifying, for changing things. You saved my life." "You saved your own life," Elliot corrected gently. "By being brave enough to report, by refusing to stay silent, I just helped make the system listen. Still, thank you." That night, Elliot stood in her apartment. She'd finally moved out of Dalton's guest room, found her own place with good locks and clear sight lines, and looked at the photos on her wall. Her father in dress blues. SEAL Team 5 reunion photo. Elliot receiving the Wright-Brennan Award at a separate ceremony honoring her advocacy work. The Silent No More logo. A life built from ruins, not perfect, not without scars, but hers. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but some instinct made her check. Text message, "Ms. Brennan. I'm a seaman apprentice. My chief has been making comments, touching me. I reported it, and they told me I'm being too sensitive. I don't know what to do. I saw your testimony. Can you help?" Elliot sat down. Opened her laptop, pulled up the case management system, typed back, "Yes. I can help. Tell me everything. And don't worry, you're not alone." Because that was the work, that was the purpose. One case at a time, one survivor at a time, one system failure corrected at a time. It would never be enough to undo the damage, to bring back the ones who didn't survive, to erase the trauma, but it was something, and sometimes something was everything. Outside her window, Charleston Harbor reflected city lights in rippling gold. Ships moved through darkness toward distant ports. The world kept turning. And Elliot Brennan, survivor, advocate, warrior in a different kind of battle, kept fighting. Not with guns this time, with policy and persistence and the stubborn refusal to let the system break another generation. She thought about Vaughn sometimes, about the letters he'd written but never sent, about the man he could have been if the system had worked differently. If accountability had come sooner, if help had been real instead of performative. But mostly she thought about the future, about the young Marine who'd won the first Wright-Brennan Award, about the seaman apprentice who'd just reached out for help, about all the people who would come after who would benefit from the changes she'd helped create. That was legacy, not revenge, not even justice exactly. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that her pain had purpose, that she'd transformed trauma into change, that she'd turned silence into sound. And somewhere, somehow, that was enough. The end came not with dramatic closure, but with ordinary continuation, with work and healing and small victories accumulated over time. With coffee at Dalton's house on Sunday mornings and therapy on Wednesday afternoons and advocacy meetings that ran late into the night. With life, messy and complicated and beautiful and hard. With survival that became something more than just not dying. Elliot closed her laptop, responded to the seaman apprentice with detailed instructions on how to file a report through the new system. Scheduled a follow-up call for tomorrow. Then she made tea, sat on her balcony, watched the harbor lights and listened to the water, thought about Jennifer Wright, about her father, about all the people who'd fought battles and lost, about the ones who'd fought and won, and about herself, 29 years old, scarred but standing, broken but rebuilding, still here, still fighting, silent no more.